the Beatles weren't the only ones with the magic. There were bands with talent just as electric, melodies that moved crowds, lyrics that stirred souls, but somehow they faded into the background, lost to time. So who were they? Let's uncover 5 forgotten bands that could have been legends. If you're tired of hearing the same 4 bands on every 60s playlist, hit that like button. And if you think underrated legends deserve their spotlight, subscribe now. We're not here to worship the obvious. We're here to dig up what the mainstream buried. Starting with number 5, the Kinks. There was a British rock band that was just as creative, bold, and influential as the Beatles, but never got the same worldwide fame. That band was the Kinks, and believe me, they deserve to be just as big. The Kinks were formed in 1964 in North London by 2 brothers, Ray Davies, the lead singer and songwriter, and Dave Davies, the wild and edgy lead guitarist. They were joined by Pete Quaife on the bass and Mick Avery on drums. The band had the perfect mix of brains, rebellion, and musical magic. Their early hit, You Really Got Me, literally changed rock music. That distorted guitar sound, that was Dave Davies slicing his amp with a razor blade. It created a raw sound that inspired hard rock and even punk later on. That's innovation. Ray Davies wrote clever, emotional, and often hilarious lyrics about British life. Songs like Waterloo Sunset, Sunny Afternoon, and Lola weren't just catchy, they told stories, captured feelings, and painted vivid pictures. He was like the Charles Dickens of rock. So why didn't they become as massive as the Beatles? One big reason is that they were banned from touring the US in the mid-1960s, right when Beatlemania was exploding. The reason? A mix of bad behavior, backstage fights, and problems with American unions. That ban kept them from reaching millions of fans in their prime. But make no mistake, their music has aged like fine wine. Bands like The Who, Blur, Oasis, and even punk rock legends credit the Kinks as a huge influence. So the next time someone tells you the Beatles were the kings of British rock, tell them this: the Kinks were the royal rebels who rocked just as hard, if not harder. So which bands are coming up next? Well, number 4, the Zombies. Just like the Kinks, there was another band in the 1960s that had just as much talent, emotion, and magic as the Beatles, but never got the fame they truly deserved. That band was the Zombies, and believe me, there is something special. The Zombies were formed in 1961 in St. Albans, England. The band had 5 talented members. Rod Argent played the keyboard and also sang. Colin Blunstone was the main singer with a soft emotional voice. Paul Atkinson played the guitar. Chris White played the bass, and Hugh Grundy played the drums and kept the beat going. They were young, stylish, and full of musical ideas that were way ahead of their time. Their music wasn't loud or wild like some other bands. It was haunting, emotional, and deeply beautiful. Songs like She's Not There, Time of the Season, and Tell Her No were filled with smooth melodies, jazzy chords, and Colin's soft, aching voice. Rod Argent's keyboard playing gave their song a dreamy, timeless feel. So why didn't they become as big as the Beatles? Part of it was timing. The best album, Odyssey and Oracle, came out in 1968 after the band had already broken up. That album is now seen as a masterpiece, but back then, it didn't get much attention. The band missed their moment in the spotlight. Also, they weren't flashy or loud. They didn't chase fame. They just wanted to make beautiful, meaningful music, and they did. But in a world full of rock stars and screaming fans, sometimes quiet brilliance gets overlooked. Today, music lovers and critics recognize the Zombies as one of the most underrated bands of the 60s. Some even say that their work was just as rich and deep as the Beatles. So the next time you're listening to old school rock, give the Zombies a try. You might discover the legends that fame forgot. How can a band shape the future of music yet disappear from the charts? We'll uncover that answer with the band in the number 2 spot. But for now, we're gonna move on to number 3, Big Star. Think about a band that created the blueprint for almost every indie rock group for the next 40 years, inspiring bands like R.E.M., The Replacements, and many others, but sold fewer records than a local coffee shop singer. That's Big Star's story. Huge influence, small sales, and a journey that's both amazing and heartbreaking. Big Star formed in the early 1970s in Memphis, Tennessee. The original band members were Alex Chilton and Chris Bell, both on vocals and guitar, Andy Hummel on bass, and Jody Steffens on drums. Together, they created a sound that mixed British-style pop with American rock in a way that felt fresh and full of feeling. Their songs like September Girls, 13, and The Ballad of El Gudo had everything: heartfelt lyrics, sweet melodies, and beautiful guitar work. Chris Bell and Alex Chilton were a dream songwriting duo, much like Lennon and McCartney. Their music talked about youth, love, hope, and heartbreak in a way that felt real and personal. So why didn't Big Star become famous? Bad luck and poor timing is the main reason. Their record label failed to promote their albums, and their music didn't get played on the radio. By the time people started realizing how great they were, the band had already broken up. If you think legends like this deserve more spotlight, hit that like button hard. And if you're tired of seeing the same old stories getting all the shine, subscribe now. We dig up the ones that the world forgot. But the twist is that after they were gone, their music became legendary. Bands like R.E.M., The Replacements, and even Nirvana called Big Star a huge influence. Their songs found new life in movies, TV shows, and tribute albums. Suddenly, everyone realized that they had missed something special. So what will be in that first spot? You guys have any guesses? Well, it's not what you might think. But for now, we'll move on to number 2, Love. Arthur Lee and Love created Forever Changes, an album so perfect, so innovative, that it regularly appears on Greatest Album Ever lists right next to Sgt. Pepper's. The difference though? Most people still haven't heard it, and that's a musical tragedy of epic proportions. Love wasn't just a band, they were a musical laboratory where rock, folk, orchestral arrangements, and psychedelic experimentation merged into something that shouldn't have worked, but absolutely did. Arthur Lee was a visionary who saw music in colors and emotions, not just notes and rhythms. Forever Changes feels like listening to the 1960s having a fever dream. Beautiful, strange, urgent, and absolutely unforgettable. Songs like Alone Again or blend mariachi horns with acid rock guitars, while Lee's vocals float between vulnerable and commanding. The album predicted everything from chamber pop to alternative rock to indie folk, all while maintaining a cohesive vision that few brands have ever matched. But Arthur Lee was complicated, brilliant but difficult, visionary but self-destructive. While the Beatles were conquering America, Lee was dealing with band tensions, label problems, and personal demons that kept Love from reaching their potential. The surprising part is that Forever Changes was made in 1967, the same year Beatles released Sgt. Pepper's. But while the Beatles became famous right away, Love only got praise many years later. It's like comparing Picasso to another great artist whose paintings stayed hidden in an attic for 50 years. Let's talk about a band so musically talented they could pull off any style: pop, rock, psychedelia, even classical with total confidence. That band was The Move. They weren't just good, they were bursting with creativity, bold ideas, and musical genius. And yet somehow they stayed in the shadows while the Beatles took the spotlight. Led by the wild and brilliant Roy Woods, The Move were musical shapeshifters. They started with catchy pop hits that could rival the Beatles, then dove into psychedelic sounds, and later played around with progressive rock and full-blown orchestral music. Roy Wood wasn't just a great songwriter, he was a one-man orchestra, playing everything from guitar to cello to kazoo. His musical ideas were bold, weird, and way ahead of their time. And a very interesting fact is that Jeff Lynne, who later started Electric Light Orchestra, was actually in The Move before ELO even existed. That's how deep this band's talent went. Songs like I Can Hear the Grass Grow were full of trippy energy, like a wild nature party in your ears. Then there was Blackberry Way, a beautiful and sad tune that showed that they could touch your heart just as easily as blow your mind. Their live shows were just as wild. They smashed TVs, cars, and even furniture on stage, making the Who's antics look tame. Yet behind the chaos was pure songwriting gold. So why didn't The Move get as big as the Beatles? Simple, they never broke into America. While they were huge in Britain with hit after hit, America radio ignored them. By the time they had a shot, Roy Wood had already moved on to create something new. Bands like the Kinks, the Zombies, Big Star, Love, and The Move had the music. What they didn't have was the lucky timing, perfect management, and media spotlight the Beatles had. But the best part is that it's not too late. These bands are still here, waiting to be discovered. Their music is powerful, beautiful, and ready to blow your mind, just like it should have blown the world's minds years ago. Which of these forgotten bands do you think should have been as big as the Beatles? Drop your pick in the comments, like and share this video, and if you're curious who couldn't stand the Beatles, check out our last video. And of course, subscribe for more.